This council meeting will be webcast, and I remind all those present that their words and actions will be broadcast to a wider audience, and certain conduct is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Should any person not wish to be recorded, I advise that they should leave the meeting prior to any statements being made. Any defamatory statements made are not the position of the council and remain an individual's opinion. Council accepts no responsibility for any defamatory statements, and all liability remains with the person making the remarks. And now I'd like to acknowledge country. I'd like to acknowledge the Gamilaroi people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. I'd also like to pay respect to elders past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people present here this evening. And now, councillors, if we could be upstanding and invite Pastor Ardell to come forward and deliver our evening prayer, meeting prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Cole. Almighty God, we thank you for the men and women of Tamworth Regional Council as they serve and lead our city and region. We ask for courage and wisdom for righteous decisions that will nourish and prosper the region. We pray for decisions of integrity, justice and equity to be at the forefront of their deliberations. We thank you for their passion and dedication for our region. We ask you to encourage and empower them through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Councillors, I would now like to formally open the meeting, and first item on our agenda this evening is apologies and leave of absence, and as we are all in attendance and there are no leave of absence sought, we'll move to item 2, community consultation. We have no members of the community registered to address the council this evening. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Could we have a mover? Councillor Betts and Councillor Empey, thank you. Before I put the motion, councillors, are there any matters arising from those minutes you wish to speak to? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The motion is carried. Item 4, disclosures of interest. Are there any registrations of interest? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 9.1, I'd like to register a less than significant non-pecuniary interest as I am a member of the West Entertainment Group. However, I will remain in the chamber and participate in discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Tickle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've wished to register a non-pecuniary less than significant interest in item 8.4, as I am a member of the Rotary Club of Tamworth First Light and also the Waste Warriors Committee. However, I'll stay in the room but won't participate in debate. I'm also a member of the West Entertainment Group, which I think most people would be, so I'll register that.
Thank you. Any, Councillor Wilson?
I register as a member of the West Leagues as well. And non-pecuniary less, and I'll stay in the chamber.
Thank you. Councillor Betts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I too am a member of the West 9.1, and I'll less than significant interest, and I'll remain in the chamber and participate in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Inglis.
Yeah, exactly the same as Councillor Betts, member of the club, and so less than significant non-pecuniary interest, and I'll remain in the chamber.
Thank you. And Councillor Webb.
Same again, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. And councillors, I would also like to register that same interest, less than significant non-pecuniary interest, and I will stay in the chamber and vote. So, any further declarations or disclosures, councillors? If not, we'll move through. Item 5, there is no mayoral minute. Item 6, there's no notice of motion. And that brings us to item 7.1. We have a mover, Councillor Rodder and Councillor Inglis, thank you. Councillor Rodder, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Only quickly that they are two worthwhile projects, and I'm sure that my fellow councillors will agree that they are both worthwhile projects. If only we could afford more for some of the other organisations and committees, that would be a great thing. But anyway, it's a good start, and I'm sure those funds will go to good work for those projects.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, the motion is carried. Item 8.1.
Yes.
With Councillor Wilson and Councillor Tickle. Thank you. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Mr Mayor, this is an excellent program, it's an excellent event, and it certainly does attract a huge amount of people to Tamworth, and that financial input is significant. But also I see this as a seeding event, because there are so many young people here, they have a positive experience, and as they go through their sporting life, then become at the top end of directing or managing groups or organisations connected to sport. So we had a good experience in Tamworth, and then it seeds on. So this is one of those ones that we really will see the benefit over the years, and maybe not related back to this. And I always feel fairly good about supporting this event and the broad range that it attracts.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Betts.
Yeah, just very briefly, Mr Mayor, I agree totally with Councillor Wilson. I'd just like to make a comment that this particular event will bring in $1.6 million to the regional economy, which is significant. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
This event not only showcases our excellent sporting facilities, but it showcases Tamworth and our region. And it has tremendous economic benefit. 5,000 participants plus their parents and other spectators and company guests, a lot of people visiting our community. So it is a health and wellbeing activity as well, which we all know is very important for all of us and for our communities. But it's not only the economic impact of this particular event, it will be the ongoing, the flow-on effect, return visitation, often investment follows these events such as this. So it's a good investment and fantastic to see 8 to 14-year-olds participating in this number.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Empey.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I've just got my computer working again, but really good to see events happening again in our city, and large ones at that. Look, I think we should be congratulating NICE for attracting this event to Tamworth once again, because these things don't happen by accident, and it's the work that their people are doing behind the scenes to make that happen. So, and of course, council's support of that goes without saying. Thanks.
Thank you. Any final comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 8.2. Move Councillor Empey and Councillor Betts. Thank you. Councillor Empey, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment?
I've just got some questions, Mr Mayor. With traffic, sorry, this is really more with the cycling when mine's a general comment.
Yes.
So I can go ahead. With the 2 loading bays, will they be timed or will they be 24-hour loading bays? Is one. And the second question, with the Carthage Street,
Councillor Wilson, I think you have the wrong report.
yeah, that's what the first one is the cycling event, so I'll speak to the second one, the cycling road event.
Thank you. Any comments, Councillor Webb?
Mr Mayor, just not so much a comment, but a question of any of the staff here. Are there any hard copies of the business paper? Because my computer won't link in. It won't.
I feel smart, don't you?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion, councillors? Any further comments? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 8.3. Councillor Wilson moving and seconded. Councillor Maxwell, thank you. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor, this is the traffic event I was wanting to speak and I'm really happy with this one. A couple of questions, the loading bays, will they be 24-hour loading bays or will they be timed just for business hours or what, because they're quite a premium after hours? And the second one, a question I have is to do with Carthage Street. There was a community request to have the parking changed, and as anybody who lives around there will know that when there's a funeral or a wedding or a fete or something at St John's, the street is absolutely packed everywhere. So the more it is really wise to keep as many parks there as possible because it impacts on the whole neighbourhood. So, but I'm quite happy with the report, but I was surprised. I was interested to know whether it was the church that requested a review or whether it was a group or whether it was an individual, just because it gives you some insight into why the changes were asked.
Councillor Wilson, I'm not sure that should strictly influence our decision here. We've got a report before us from our professional staff, and I think it's our obligation to consider it, probably irrespective of who brings the matter forward. So I'm sure that could be a question you could put outside the meeting.
Mr Mayor, that wasn't my intent. I was just interested that there might be a broader reason for the change. I'll be supporting the motion, but nevertheless, I'm making the point that we need not to cut back on parking because it's fairly important.
Thank you. And with regard to your question regarding the loading zone in White Street car park, Councillor Betts, do you have any insight into that, or Mr Resch? It would be a 24
Mayor, I would imagine
hour.
it would be timed, but I will confirm that.
Thank you.
Councillors.
Thank you. Councillor Embee.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's really just a comment, I think, and probably one that the community would share. It's nice to see an increase in the number of disability car parking spaces in critical areas. And we have an ageing population, of course, and it's not just people with strict disabilities who use these spaces, it's also aged and frail and people who are senior citizens in our community who have those little tags that they put on their dash. So it's just nice to see an increase in the number of spaces.
Thank you. Councillor Tickle.
The increase in the disability car space will be very welcomed by this community. People with disabilities and carers, and not only people in wheelchairs, people on a temporary disability such as crutches, and those with a walking stick. So this will benefit many. It has been raised many times in our Disability Access Working Group and also members of the public, and the staff have always been very accommodating and taking those comments forward, and we'll see the result that we have before us here. But there is an ongoing problem, and we have done audits into this, but it is something to be mindful of when anyone is constructing footpaths and disability car spaces, that there is access from the road to the footpath. The curb is always a problem, so it can't be negotiated. Another problem that's been highlighted to me as recently as the weekend and prior to that is with mobility scooters. Unfortunately, many things, as we know, are built to minimum engineering standards. We need to take into consideration modern day wheelchairs, modern day mobility scooters, because they cannot turn to gain access into many buildings. And I think we need to be mindful of this with DAs when approving ramps and footpaths, and not only in council facilities but also in privately owned one. It is a problem, and there have been many instances that have been pointed out, and they can't be fixed because there's not enough turning space to do simple things like go into a toilet in a wheelchair because built on minimum standards. And so this will be welcomed by many, and thank you to all the staff for actioning that.
Thank you.
Are we still in 8.2?
Any further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, the motion is carried. And just before I put 8.4, councillor Tickle, was it your intention to stay in the chamber but not vote? Or did you say with your disclosure of interest in the Rotary Club First Light matter?
8.4, yes, but I'll stay in the room.
But you won't vote or you will vote?
Won't participate.
I won't vote.
Well, that'll be recorded in the negative against the motion if,
Well, could I seek clarification on that, please? It's a non-pecuniary interest,
Yes.
and I'm not participating in discussion.
but you will,
I will vote.
yes, no, well, that's fine.
That's
Thank you.
permissible.
No, that clarifies, thank you. Sorry, so councillors, I'll now put 8.4. We move councillor Impey and councillor Betts, thank you. Councillor Impey, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Well, only, yes, please, Mr Mayor, sorry.
Yes.
Only that I think it's prudent thinking, I think, on behalf of the organisers to go to an online event rather than trying to deliver an in-person event in the current climate. So it also opens up the opportunities for students in the Manillas and the Barracas and the other schools, Nundle, the primary schools, Bendemeer, etc., who might not be able to attend due to distances and so forth. It costs to get a bus, and it costs $1,000 to catch a bus for a day for a school, and that's a lot of money. So I think it's a good idea to go online in this instance.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, the motion is carried. Item 8.5. Move councillor Inglis and councillor Wilson. Councillor Inglis, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, the motion is carried. And that brings us to item 9.1.
I'll move it.
Move councillor Webb and seconded councillor Betts, thank you. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Oh, Mr Mayor, I will. I'll say that we've done this for a number of years. There are critics of us supporting these types of events, but to be quite honest with you, for the amount of money that we are injecting into this game, I think the city as a whole, and I'll say the city and the region as a whole, benefits tenfold from the amount of money that we put into just helping sponsor this event. I take my hat off to the organisation that's done all of the hard work, all of the hard yards, putting a lot more at stake than certainly we are to bring this event to our city and to our region. And I think we'd be very foolish not to support this recommendation, because in the interest of the wider community, this is a fantastic outcome.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Rodder?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with what Councillor Webb said in relation to the proponents of the event, and it is a great event. But I just think it's probably unnecessary that in this, not long ago we were told as councillors that we had to tighten our belts in relation to the budgets and things like that, and I think it's unnecessary because the National Rugby League had already considered Tamworth as a site to come here. They're going to be promoting that at the venues leading up to that match, and I just don't see it as a necessary spend.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Inglis?
Mr Mayor, just the observation that I think it's important, as you know, when we get these reports from staff, of course, I've always seen them as they're also reports to the community, as much as they are to us. And particularly with these sort of reports where we are putting money to various things, and as you know, we have a system whereby we calculate economic benefit, and we've sort of got the number in here, but the community's got a right to know, how did we come to that number? We've got it in an earlier report, the calculation, the numbers and all the rest of it, so at least for the fence sitters on these sort of things, that bit of extra information just puts some validity into the number, because you do get a bit of cynicism from people when you just hear a number, if they have no understanding of where it comes from. I mean, I know how the formula works, but this is a report to the community. So I think it's always important in these types of reports to have that, how we've calculated it in there.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I must admit I can't support this because I think in any case, regardless of whether we support or we don't support, that's going to happen. And I'm sure when it goes on national TV, Tamworth will be very prominent. It won't be some town in the bush, so I'll be voting against this motion.
Councillor Tickle.
Mr Mayor, there's well documented evidence that rural and regional tourism and in business investment is in the growth stage. And we need to capitalise on every opportunity we have. That growth stage also includes small communities. It doesn't just include Tamworth. So this is a tremendous opportunity to have Tamworth up there in the lights, but a lot of people will be staying out of town and in the small communities or travelling through those smaller communities to reach their destination. I agree with Councillor Inglis. Let's spell it out how we calculate this. We have a direct spend, the actual spend that people will be paying when they're here. That spend flows into the retail sector, it flows into a pharmacy, into a service station, even into our health facilities. That spend is not only on the day and in for their motel or for their food. Someone will get a flat tyre, so they'll need a new tyre. Somebody will break down, and on it goes. Continually hear of these huge events like this where somebody's gone and bought a lawnmower, or they bought a chainsaw, or they bought something else in Taminga. So the flow-on effects, and let's spell it out to the community, are significant. We can apply the 1.3 multiplier effect to arrive at that economic benefit. It is huge, and return visitation from these events is well documented. West Entertainment Group, we've been previously informed, have made significant contributions into our sporting facilities. $1 million into the development to a nationally accredited tennis facility, Courts on East. That will be to the benefit of Manila, of Nundle, of the whole region, and it will attract other people here. So I think in these times where everybody's scrambling for events, it is very opportune and appropriate that we support this. And also note that in other area regional centres, council underwrite the whole event. In this particular instance, we have West Entertainment Group underwriting it. So let's welcome all these people to Tamworth, and it's there for the locals to enjoy. And businesses will benefit, our community will benefit, so I wholeheartedly support the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Betts.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Totally agree with Councillor Tickle and Councillor Inglis. Certainly the benefits are significant. But one of the things that I see is, and was touched on earlier, the marketing potential. You would, for that amount of money, you just could not buy the amount of marketing that is available. But right now, we're in a time of the COVID where people aren't travelling overseas, and people are now starting to move out of the metropolitan areas into the regional centres. And to be able to market ourselves, just one little particular point, what we're doing now with this event is marketing Tamworth, that the capability to hold a national type sporting event will also be an attractor to people moving from the metropolitan areas. So thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Well, if Tamworth doesn't host this and we lose it, someone else will. And that someone else could be another game at Wagga, or another game at Orange, or another game at Bathurst, or Dubbo. You know, they've just recently hosted a game. So if we don't host this and we don't support this and continue to support it with West Leagues, we'll lose it and somebody else will get it. I think this is a unique event. It's not an event that is followed by just people in a certain region or just people in New South Wales. It's also people in Queensland, all around Australia, and indeed all around the world. People around the world who are expat Australians listen to the game on ABC digital radio, and Tamworth gets mentioned in any typical game in Tamworth many times, because I listen to them all. I'm a big rugby league fan, by the way. So I think it's important to ensure that we keep it, because the ripple effect is huge for this type of event. $20,000 wouldn't buy this anywhere else. So radio, television, internet coverage, all across Australia and indeed in parts of the world, and I think we'd be silly to knock it back.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, I absolutely support this. I understand that there's concerns because the money's been given not to a sporting organisation but to a business, and that does bring criticism. However, the input that will have to local businesses and to branding of Tamworth, and also to the mental well-being and enthusiasm that injects into our region and our city is really critical, and people are just hanging out for something to get excited about. So whether your team wins or it doesn't matter. There's been an event, people are enthusiastic, and I support that.
Thank you. Councillor Webb to close the debate.
Yeah, unless you want to say something first, Mr Mayor.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, just to close the debate, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. Some of the councillors have mentioned that it would have come, whether we put the 20k up or not. Well, when the first game came, it probably definitely wouldn't have come, or would not have come. And I think we've got to continue that, I think we've got to continue what we've started. It sends a very clear message to the sporting bodies in the nation, in particular sporting bodies in Sydney that might show some interest in coming here, that we are supportive as a city of them coming here, and we've got the facilities here for this to happen. We're very lucky that the organisation that Councillor Wilson mentioned, and that's a good point, that we're supporting, we seem to be supporting a business, but we're not. We're actually supporting the fact that that business has built a facility with our support that these games can be hosted in, and they need to know that the city's behind them. And of course, not only do they need to know, that the people that are going to be coming up here need to know that the city and the whole of the region is 100% behind them. And if you do your sums, if people are a bit worried about it, and you do your sums, it's a bit over 30 cents a head of our population to support this game to come to our city. Now, if we go to places like Mudgee, we go to Bathurst, we go to other centres where they're hosting these games, some of those councils are actually putting up a couple of $100,000 to host that game in their centre to support the businesses in their region. Here we are having to put $20,000 forward on behalf of the residents of the city, on behalf of the businesses in our city, to promote this activity happening here, which economically will be a massive benefit for the wider community. I do agree with Councillor Inglis's comments that it would be good if the community out there could fully understand how those figures are put together, and I think that's a good thing, Councillor Inglis. But Mr Mayor, we have to support these events now, and we have to support them into the future, because they do make this city the place that it is, and we're renowned for good sporting facilities. We're renowned for having these activities, sporting activities in our region. We're sought after as a venue from many sporting codes to come here because of our facilities, and that's what we've done well in the past, and that's what I hope we will do well in the future.
Thank you. Councillors, that closes the debate. I'll now put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Motion is carried. Item 9.2, Councillor Inglis, thank you. And second, Councillor Maxwell. Councillor Inglis, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Oh, look, thanks, Mr Mayor. I've just got one matter I want to raise with the MOU. I mean, I understand that the MOU, whilst it's not legally binding, of course, it does carry weight, and that includes, ethical obligations to fulfil its requirements. There's an exclusivity clause in there, and that just bothers me from an aspect of being lawful. And that's around, and whenever you have an exclusivity clause, we need to give that very thoughtful consideration. and that's in relation to the provision of tertiary education and research services, because in Australia that operates in an open marketplace, open access marketplace. And it is highly likely, as already been evidenced by a whole stack of arrangements already in Tamworth, that situations will arise whereby a preferred supplier of education, in particular the research side of life, may need to be from a different provider. So I'm concerned about the lawful nature of that exclusivity clause, because agreements that prohibit competition, of course, as I say, can be unlawful. What I'm saying is that I just think I'd like to ask my fellow councillors just to amend the motion slightly to authorise the Mayor to have discussions with UNE to just ensure that that clause won't prohibit competition in the city in the delivery of education and research services.
Okay.
And before I sit down, Mr Mayor, can I also just publicly acknowledge the efforts of UNE to date? They have been terrific in my view. And I'd particularly like to acknowledge the efforts of VC Bridget Hayward, Professor Deborah Dunstan and David Miron. They really have been committed to the task and under some difficult circumstances, particularly around funding, what have you. But I'm very impressed with their commitment and their efforts to get UNE established in Tamworth.
Thank you.
Would you like some wording, Mr Mayor?
Yeah, I think it'd be of assistance, Councillor Inglis, thank you.
I think the easiest thing would be go to council authorise the Mayor to sign the memorandum subject to yeah, forget what I said before, I'll read it out to you, yeah. Authorise the Mayor to sign the memorandum subject to discussions with UNE to ensure that clause 1.4b does not prohibit competition in the delivery of education and research services. Full stop.
Thank you. So councillors, we're all clear on the motion now. We have it seconded by Councillor Impey, thank you. And I think Councillor Maxwell, sorry.
Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Thanks. So councillor, is there anyone wishes to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment?
Just a clarification, to have signed, just get rid of the word have.
Thank you. Thank you. Any comments, Councillor Wilson?
Mr Mayor, I endorse Councillor Inglis' comment. It's been really hard work to get to this stage and taken a lot of work from UNE and from Tamworth and Tamworth Regional Council, and it is commendable the work that's been put in by the personnel that Councillor Inglis has mentioned, because it's been a rocky path in terms of funding and negotiations, but we've actually started and look forward to the future of developing more university facilities in Tamworth. I also endorse the short change we've made there, because it's our intention to encourage the delivery of education and research for our region. And we certainly need to make sure that that's the intent, and that's the intent of this document too.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? Councillor Tickle, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I also acknowledge the work that the UNE and the committee have done reaching this point, and they're to be congratulated, and hopefully we'll be seeing bigger and better opportunities as we move forward. It's not only an opportunity for our locals, but it's an opportunity for Tamworth as a whole, as it's well documented that students move to towns to undertake studies. They move from other areas, and quite often they stay, and then other members of the family move as well. There are many instances of that in other regional cities that has occurred. Whilst it's fantastic what the University of New England are doing, and we all greatly appreciate it, I think it also should be acknowledged the tremendous contribution that other universities make to our city. The University of Newcastle conducts a very successful University of Newcastle Rural Health program at Tamworth. It's been going now for several years with many, many positive outcomes. And one of those programs, the Joint Medical Program, is actually run in conjunction with the UNE. So we must remember that we need to collaborate, we need to do programs together, and as a community we want the best possible outcome for our community, no matter which university provides that. And I think we need to encourage participation from all universities, but in this particular case I certainly support the motion as it stands.
Thank you. Councillor Impey?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Well, we're probably the last remaining regional centre, at least in New South Wales, if not Australia, of a population of 50,000 or more that doesn't have a university undergraduate presence. I talk to students every day, both at my school and other schools for other careers advisors as well. My partner's a careers advisor, so we talk about this nearly every night. How difficult it is for students and young people to make a transition from school and into post-school tertiary programs. They have to move away. And hopefully this MOU will mean that in the not too distant future, we will have undergraduate studies as an opportunity for young people and existing workers, so that this city can have an extra dimension and this region can have an extra dimension to its community, and study programs can be at reach, finally, for people in our.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. And councillors, before I call for a motion for items 11.1 through 5 to go into closed council for consideration, are there any members of the public who would like any of those matters brought forward into open council? Any members of the council? If not, I would thank those members of the public for their interest and attention, and invite them to leave the chamber while we move into closed council. Thank you. And councillors, now if I could take a motion to for 11.1 through to 5 to move into closed council. We just need that motion. Councillor Betts and Councillor Maxwell, those in favour, against, carried.
And now I can report back that all matters in the closed council were adopted as printed with the exception of item 12.1 where the council resolved to authorise the mayor and general manager to enter into discussions to determine the amount of land required and the purchase offer. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, can we have a motion to support that? Councillor Rodder and Councillor Dawson, those in favour? Those against, the motion is carried. And that brings our meeting to a close and we have some matters to speak